We also have a program called GRIP, Gang Reduction and Intervention Program. Very recently, I was in Gilpin Court here in Richmond, the largest public housing project between Washington, D.C. and Atlanta, Georgia. It is a very difficult neighborhood. They have many challenges within their homes and families and in that community. We are running an office there now to help at-risk youth make positive life choices, to stay out of gangs, that they don't become a substitute for a family, and we help them with a place to go after school, to get homework done with tutors there, play games with friends, learn some life skills that they might not otherwise get, or at least not as early. And even out of this particular facility, we also have something for the young adults to learn how to do job interviews and do job placement, because we know how important being able to take care of oneself and one's own family is, and being able to get that job is, of course, the keystone for that. I mentioned our Medicaid Fraud Control Unit. This is also an elder abuse unit, which is a growing problem for us, and a focus of our legislation this year is in Medicaid fraud and elder abuse. For instance, right now, if we go into a nursing home because we have reason to believe that an adult resident is being abused in some way or another, we have the ability to subpoena their medical records. Of course, it's maintained confidentially, but to see what their medical treatment is and how it matches up with how they're actually being treated. That's critical, particularly for some of our folks who are struggling more. It's not always easy to tell the difference between the result of abuse or of being ill. But in the next room, we can see signs of the same sort of problem and yet have no authority to lay our hands on those records to determine if that person is being abused. We don't have the ability to protect them. So this year in the General Assembly, we have a bill to allow us exactly that authority for the very limited purpose of executing our obligation to protect the elderly here in Virginia. And of course, this is a growing population in Virginia. This is a growing problem in Virginia, and we intend to continue being aggressive about it. We have had a great deal of success, but as the numbers grow, the problem grows, and we have to adjust to address it more nimbly, and this legislation is one way we're doing that. We also have some other Medicaid fraud legislation this year to make sure that Virginia can keep more of our fraud recoveries so that we get more return on our governmental investment. I hate to talk in business terms for law enforcement, because we don't go after people to get money for the Commonwealth. We go after them because they've stolen money from the Commonwealth. Or, in the case of elder abuse, they're mistreating the citizens. So we have bills on both of those. A totally separate subject is property rights and eminent domain reform. Here in Virginia, we do not protect property rights in the Constitution, which is really pretty astonishing in a state where Patrick Henry and George Mason voted against the U.S. Constitution because it didn't have a Bill of Rights protecting individual rights. That was an enormous concern for them. And one of the biggest for the founders was protecting property rights. And to this day, we do not protect property rights in Virginia's Constitution. So that's being debated now. The amendments that we're supporting would do 4 different things. One, it makes sure that, I say government, but some private entities like utility companies can take property, to make sure they're taking it only for a public use, not to take your property and give it to a developer to put together some project that the local government would really like to see happen. That's not a public use. It would be blocked constitutionally if this were approved. This is, for those of you that remember the infamous Kelo case in 2005 at the U.S. Supreme Court, that's what was going on there. 87-year-old Suzette Kelo in her little pink house was being taken by New London, Connecticut, to give to Pfizer, because, you know, they're paupers, to build a parking lot for their new building. Well, they took the property, once the Supreme Court let them do it on a 5-4 vote. They took the property that, God bless her, she made the sheriffs come remove her from the house. And a tough lady. And you know what? Pfizer never did the project. This has happened in Virginia, here in Roanoke, with Carillion, and the local government there has eliminated a viable business which can't, because of we undercompensate, can't relocate and restart effectively. And yet, when they went through that whole process, Carillion decided not to do the project. So this happens in Virginia too. And we hope to stop that by protecting our small property owners and small business owners. And the people who get picked on the most in this area are minorities and the poor, the people who can't fight back. Bullies don't pick on people their own size. When was the last time you heard of government beating up on Walmart to take their property? You know, it just doesn't happen. The people who get victimized by their own government are the ones who can't fight back, who don't have a voice. So it's important that these protections be ensconced in the Constitution. I mentioned undercompensating. Well, damages would be addressed here. We would finally get closer to 100% of compensation for folks. We put people out of business by taking their property and undercompensating them to the point where they can't move and restart it back up. And both the NFIB can tell you stories about this, our small businesses, and the Farm Bureau out in the rural areas. We will require that no more property than is absolutely necessary for the public use be taken, and that the government must prove, or the condemnor as it's called, must prove that the reason they're taking it is in fact a true public use, rather than having the property owner have to prove that it's not a public use. This is again intended to protect individual rights, and so it should be, the onus should be on the government to carry that burden. That would be a major change. Of course, it would go to the ballot. The people of Virginia could address this. My prediction would be 75-25 or 80-20 if it were actually voted on by the people of Virginia.